It starts with not being a fake plant. It starts with remembering that we're not called to be perfect. We're not called to look like perfection and be this idealistic person. We're called to be ourselves. And we're going to have holes. We're going to have flaws.
Welcome to She Leads. I'm your host, Thea, and I'm so glad that you decided to tune in today. She Leads is a place for women to talk about leadership, faith, and relationships, bringing our authentic and unique experiences together. And once again, I'm so glad that you decided to join the conversation. I have been so overwhelmed and really pleased with your encouragement and support, the likes and the shares. Please continue to share She Leads with those other leaders out there who need to hear stories of women making a difference in the world today. And as always, I want to invite you into the conversation. And so you are encouraged to send your comments, feedback, questions to sheleadscomments@gmail.com. And today I was going to read a quick one that said, just simply keep them podcasts coming. I actually enjoy them. And so has my husband. And I wanted to point that out because I actually have a few male listeners and followers. And while this is a podcast that is devoted to women in leadership and their lives, I know that our husbands, our brothers, our sons, our colleagues can learn from the experiences that we bring. And for those of you who are raising daughters, who love women, who are encouraging them, I welcome you into this space as well. So I'm glad that this listener has been sharing the podcast with her husband too. So today, Gina Summers is back for part 2. We're going to continue our conversation. And so, Gina, why don't you introduce yourself briefly? And then you shared last time that you are a listener. What have you gained from listening to the podcast?
I have gained knowledge that other females are out there leading, that they're willing, and that they're not afraid to be seen. They don't want to be pushed to the back anymore. They want to take the forefront, and they want to lead authentically and as themselves in a space where before maybe women might not have been seen leading.
Mm-hmm. Something we were talking about that's been really neat is that this has been a space to highlight different forms of women in leadership. So some women who haven't considered themselves leaders or and others just of like, oh, wow, I didn't think about that, and how we're able to kind of just really highlight and encourage and continue to empower women to be who they were designed to be. So I'm glad to have you back today. Let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to talk a little bit about what it might be like to get really honest about our faith. And so I just wanted to start with, how do you describe your faith experience?
I describe it like a second chance. Before, I'm a born-again Christian. I had faith as a very little kid, and I kind of lost it in my teens and in my early 20s, and then I refound it again. So it's definitely been a journey that has been like no other. It's been eye-opening, it's been rewarding, it's been tiring, it's been humbling, it's been everything wrapped into one. Like all of these experiences and all of these feelings were just bursting out the seams for God, for faith, for this sense of desire to belong to something deeper, and to have that every day is just so rewarding. So rewarding. Whether I reach for it every day now is a different story, but I know that He is there, and I know that He is always there, and it's just amazing. My faith walk has been very hard. In the very beginning, I was in addiction, and I have some years clean in sobriety, and so does my husband. So it was just like a breath of fresh air, and it still is. Yeah. And like before, I used to have like this hard exterior where I didn't really feel anything, and now I just feel everything. And it all just makes me want to cry, and it's just so beautiful and wonderful, from the little bees on the flower to the sunsets to the real things you see, to the unsheltered people living outside, to the children who need your compassion and need your heart. It's just been very rewarding.
Yeah. I love that you have that kind of quintessential born again kind of faith, right? Like truly I was lost, now I'm found, which is it's beautiful to witness and to experience. I would describe you as continually being on fire, hungry for more,
Thank you.
for more knowledge, but more relationships, more connection to God and to one another. And you're seeking and looking for that in a lot of different places and finding it, right? In ways that you can like experience that glory. I love that you just said that you used to be numb or used to be, that typically happens with people in addiction, but you had a hard exterior shell and now you feel like you're feeling everything and it's amazing. And I also know there have been obstacles,
Yeah.
right? And so what is maybe just one or two kind of key obstacles that you've had in your born again faith?
Was learning how to swim by myself. I used to be part of a church, and a very small church that taught you to swim together. And they taught you that, or they didn't teach you, they taught Jesus, they taught his love, don't get me wrong. But it was kind of this unsaid thing that you had to make the same motion and that you had to do the same thing. And before you know it, it felt more of like a club, like a social club, than actually picking up your Bible and reading it. And it really taught me how to swim. It taught me not to be afraid. If I used to go to the bars by myself, why can't I go to church by myself? If I used to do all of these fiery things, then why can't I do that by myself for Jesus at church? And that one, I forgot what the question was. I got sidetracked, sorry.
No, that idea that you had to learn how to swim your own way.
Yeah, I had to swim my own way and know that Jesus controls the water. It's not the church that I go to. It's the fact that the water is beautiful. It is wonderful. And if you know how to be in the water, it is great. But if you don't, and you don't know how to swim and you get out there, it's easy to be consumed by it. And this idea that Jesus is the water and that swimming is this notion of taking a deep breath and moving and not flailing, not freaking out because you get tired faster. It's this motion and this small little step right after one another in the water to stay alive.
I love your illustrations. You are so good at that. You have such a beautiful way of bringing these things to life. This idea that, if you're flailing around,
you're going to drown.
Yeah. And actually, when you talk about swimming in the water, it just also made me think of the beginning, the opening credits for The Chosen. If you're watching that. So it's a bunch of fish, kind of grayscaled against a black screen. And then every now and then a fish will turn the other way and then it becomes blue. And then you see not a million, but more and more blue fish turning the other way. So getting out of the current, out of the regular way that everyone else is going and choosing a new way. And that kind of just connects to that too, just this beautiful, even, your past experiences and your decisions and how you were coping. You said, I'm going to choose a new way. I'm going to try a new way. And maybe that doesn't match exactly like the other followers in my, vicinity. But I also would argue that I think you stay true to that. And maybe even sometimes are hesitant to the group, right?
Yes,
is that fair?
It is. I definitely am. One time Thea told me that, how do I say this? That I loved Jesus, but I didn't like church because it's not that I see, but I have commitment issues with congregations now. You mentioned on the last one about what we need. I think when you enter in a church, you're like entering a relationship. What do I need? What do you need? What can we give and gain from each other? And it's not like in this materialistic sense. It's let me grow and I want to grow with you. And when you told me that, my eyes opened and it was like, ooh, it is me. I don't like churches. I love Jesus and I love people, but ooh, I have some issues I need to work through. Sure. And once I seen that, and it helped me. It helped me be present for the people in the community and realize that it's okay that I don't like sometimes the churches. And that doesn't mean that I don't love God. That doesn't mean that I'm not a follower of Jesus. That doesn't mean that I'm not willing to get down and dirty for the random church across the street. But what it does mean is that I have commitment issues. Sure. and that's okay. And once I'm willing to wade through that, I can serve with some purpose.
Yeah. And as a pastor to a local church and who still believes that the local church has one of the greatest arenas for discipleship making, Definitely. I also would argue that your fears are warranted. You know, the church as a whole has failed in a lot of ways. And knowing your story and being alongside you, like I can see that too, where, yeah, there's been some real hurt. And so you're visiting a church for 9 months
Yes.
because you're just not ready to make that commitment. And I'll just say too, and as a pastor, like, yeah, let's wait until you're really all in.
Well, I don't even know if I want to make commitments anymore. I don't like this idea that we have to belong to a church. We have to be a member. I can tithe. I can give you my money. I can give you my time. I can give you my sweat. I can come alongside you and I can love Jesus with you and worship with you and pray with you. But why must I give you my membership? Why must I join you? We can still grow together and grow organically and grow beautifully. But then that stops my roots from coming over here to this church. It stops my roots from seeing these people over here. It stops me from being willing to want to go into other circles where people from congregations are at because they don't have a church sticker on the back of their car that matches mine. I don't have any church stickers on my car, but we're not in the same social club. And I think it refines our roots and it allows us to grow this garden of flowers that all kind of look the same. And I know I've used that analogy with you before, but Jesus is like this beautiful garden of all different types of flowers, not just daisies, not just tulips or roses, but all of them. Even the shrub grasses at the bottom that's under everything. And I think belonging to a church hinders that. Doesn't allow you to spread your seeds, or it doesn't allow you to experience faith through other ways.
So you've shared with me this idea recently about Faith Anonymous, which sounds like there is still a seeking of collective community. So why don't you just explain, what did you mean by that, and what need would that fill?
So as I said earlier, I am in recovery and I have some time in recovery. And in the very beginning of recovery, I would go to NA meetings and AA meetings, which are Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. And let me tell you, they are some of the most honest people I have ever met. And it's not about like, I'm Gina Summers from Arcola, Texas, and I have 2 kids. No, it's I'm Gina S. And the less they know about me, the better. Because I go in there for help. I go in there for growth. I go in there for this honest connection to seek with other people. And I think that's what we need to do at church. We need to go in there for honesty. We need to go in there for growth. We need to go in there as transparent people, not as, it's great when women look nice and men look nice and we go to church like that, but is that how you were feeling 15 minutes ago before you got in the car? Or is that the face you put on to walk into church? I want to meet your authentic self. And I've had this idea called Faith Anonymous because to me, it ties back to Narcotics Anonymous and or Anonymous Alcoholics, whatever it's called. I know what I'm talking about. Hey. And it gives them this space to be transparent where I can tell you the worst of the worst. And what you're going to do is you're going to look me back in the face and you're going to say, thank you for sharing. You're not going to condemn me. You're not going to do anything but help me get to the next step so I can take one step closer to being better. And in faith, we can't share authentically because I don't want to hurt the pastor's feelings. I don't want to be told I'm a hypocrite. I don't want to be told I'm a sinner. I don't want to be told anything other than I'm a church-going person on a Sunday morning. And I think it would give you this space to speak into, to be honest, to say, hey, I failed, whether it was as a person of the church, whether it was as a pastor, or whether it was as the person working at Target who just needed space to speak. I think sharing anonymously leads to love that can help you grow inside more than I don't know what.
Yeah. I'm really, really intrigued by this idea, and something I heard maybe a year ago, maybe a little less. Again, a comedian on a podcast, again, my inspiration. And I might have said this before, but John Christ said something like that he had gone to an AA meeting and afterwards asked himself, why can't church be more like AA? And it makes me so curious of what are we hiding? What are we hiding in our Sunday morning steeples? What are we hiding, and who do we think we're really hiding anything from? I mean, our scriptures tell us that God knows it all, everything under the sun. And so I love this idea of what would it be like if we were more honest, whether it's in the place we gather on a Sunday, if it's in our homes, in our relationships, out in the community. And that if we were less worried about condemning and defining righteousness, but instead more accepting, like you said, when you share in an AA meeting, the response is thank you.
It's thank you. It's not I can fix you. It's not anything else. It is thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do we do that? Where do we start?
Well, I have this idea about plants, about a fake plant. If you keep a fake plant in the corner, it looks real. The leaves are nice. The soil is nicely even on top. It's fake. But you don't have to water it. It requires nothing to grow. It just looks nice all the time. And then you can see a regular plant, like let's say one, maybe I might buy at the store. And the first day I buy it, it's going to look wonderful. And it's going to be green and perky, and the soil's going to be nice. And then I'll water it for one day, and it'll stay that way. And then I don't water it, and then it starts looking like this. And then the leaves get crispy, and then it dries out, and it dies. And I think that leaders and people need to stop being fake plants. I think they need to remember that we're real. It's okay. It's okay to have worn leaves. It's okay to have a sense of needing water to go forward. It has a sense of needing the truth to go forward and to be honest. But it starts with not being a fake plant. It starts with remembering that we're not called to be perfect. We're not called to look like perfection and be this idealistic person. We're called to be ourselves. And we're going to have holes. We're going to have flaws. But if we can do that truthfully and honestly, then most of the time Christ comes in and he mends it and he brings it together, giving you words to speak, giving you new eyes, giving you a heart to go further to love. And I think it starts with not being a fake plant. A lot of church, not all of them, but a lot of church leaders are fake plants. They want to be presented that they don't go through weathered storms. They want to be presented that they don't have seasons of dormancy where they have to rest in order to go forward, to have a new flower bud next season. They don't do that. Yeah. They want to always look like they're in full bloom, and it always looks like I've been watered and that my soil's even, when it's not the case.
Yeah. What I thought about too is not only do we have to decide we're not going to be a fake plant that we cannot idolize. We got to stop buying them. We got to stop worshiping them. We've got to stop setting this expectation, even admiring, right? And I think about that, as moved a lot recently. And you think, all right, well, a good plant would go there, right? And then I think, well, that's only going to last for so long because I just can't. I can keep like one or two alive, but once I get 3 or 4 in the house, I don't know, they're competing for oxygen. They can't survive. But, and there's a temptation. Well, I'll just get a little, especially have like a little, I get a little small. No one will know it's fake except me. But I don't know it's fake. I don't want a fake plant in my house. No. Why?
I tried to buy one at Michael's, and Olivia was like, Mom, that's a fake plant. Why are you buying that? And I was like, but it looks pretty. And it would serve its purpose sitting in the corner. We're not fake plants. We don't need to serve our purpose from a corner. We need to get out there, and we need to move. We need to grow. And being honest allows that. You can't be honest with a fake plant because there's nothing to be honest about. If you took a fake plant and treated it like a real plant, if you gave it sun, and if you poured water in that pot, it would get moldy and gross, and it would push up, and it would like do the opposite. It would start to discolor. It would start to die, even though it was never alive, and then it's trash. How do you kill something that's fake? Yeah. You really can't. But people need to stop doing that. And when we have people in the pulpit, or when we have people who we work for, or who are even our friends, And they get this idea that let's do this. Let's do this because it looks good. Let's do this because it looks nice. Let's do this because we don't know why, but there's always been a fake plan over there, so we need to fill this void. No. And in NA, there is a saying that says, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And if you don't go forward and do the work that you know you have to do to keep yourself going, it's not going to work. Now, I'm not saying that my salvation rests on me. No, never. A salvation is a gift from God, and he gives it to you. But that's a spiritual gift. We live in the flesh. If I wouldn't have got up and done all the hard work it took to become sober, it might not have ever happened. God would have given me salvation, and I would have died a drug addict. I had to get up. I had to detox. I had to go forward and say, I want to do better because of Christ's salvation. And just the space, to be honest, is so hard. And, we would do Bible studies at one of my churches, and they would ask to share, and I would share authentically. And then one time, maybe, I don't know, it was too much. And the lady looked at the table and was like, well, you can share a little bit, or you can share like Gina did. Like, it's okay to just share anything. And I was just like, I thought we were here for authentic responses. And even if you don't want to listen to me, just if you're giving me space to speak in this circle, then let me say what I'm saying, but it doesn't need this condemnation back. It doesn't need this correction back. It hinders Christ if you are correcting him. The experiences I went through were terrible and horrible, but it gave me eyes to see. It gave me a voice to know that I don't have to hide it, even though I've been ashamed and done some terrible things. That's not what defines me. What defines me now is Jesus, and is this space to be real and just real, just real, because there's nothing else you can be,
When you, I've shared before, I have experience with AA. My mom is about 28
It's awesome.
years sober, something like that. And the authenticity in those spaces. And I've only been, to the meetings she goes to, and I would say that those are not beautiful spaces. They're not shiny. That's the word we use a lot. Shiny. They're not shiny and polished, but the people are real and they're honest. And I remember even my husband went with me to a birthday celebration, an AA birthday celebration, where everyone goes around the room and just says something, kind of real about the person celebrating a milestone. And it was his first time. And afterwards, he just said, I can't believe all those people poured open their hearts like that. And it wasn't that it wasn't so shocking to me because I had been around that before. But the more I thought about it, was like, and they do this. Some of them
Five
some of them every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And how little, unfortunately, that is seeming to happen, at least in my experiences in the church. And I love the church, and as a leader in the church, I'm striving to create those spaces. But I think there's a lot to learn from the recovery community. And there's, interestingly, you and I went to a recovery worship service on a Saturday night in Pasadena, Sunset United Methodist, I believe is what it's called. There's another one in Houston. My greatest appeal to these Saturday night recovery worship is they're on Saturday nights where I could actually make it and sit as a worshiper, but there's something really, really special that happens in those spaces. And I would argue it's the honesty.
Well, it's also the realness. They're there because they want to be there. It's not this is what my parents have done in front of me, or this is what my family has done, and these are the things that I'm taught to do. No, it's this desire. It's this want to go forward. They want to be there. That want and desire is so important. Yeah. So important. And like you said, they're not shiny places. Those most NA meetings and AA meetings are places people wouldn't want to be. They have poorly ground coffee. It smells like cigarette smoke, and all kinds of funky stuff in there. The sofas are often mismatched, worn leather things that are cracked, and one cushion here, and more often than not, they're packed. more often not, they're filled. And hopefully it's with people who have desires to get clean and that they are going to go forward. But why is it that we shy away from those places? Is it because of the way they look and the types of people that are there? Is it because they're not driving fancy cars? Is it because they don't have air conditioning? What is it? Or is it because that they admit their sin open and honest and willingness? And that's too heavy because Barbara's yelling at her kids while she's taking prescription pills and drinking wine and doesn't want to be told anything because I don't have a problem because it's a prescription and it's just one beer, one wine. But it makes your sin feel much more magnitude, but that's not what it's about. It's about coming together in this honest space to go forward, to become a new person. It is literally the iron sharpening iron process. And it is ugly. Have you ever watched anybody sharpen iron? It's like you got to wear these special gloves. You've got to get it hot. You've got to bend it. It's a process. It's hot, it's stinky, and it's sweaty. And it's...
As you're describing the rooms, I'm also thinking of the counter churches tend not to look like that. They tend to be very polished and clean. But I would argue nobody's flocking there either.
Well, do you think it's
Less and
because
less.
that they're polished and clean and perfect? And
think
then
it's
I
something
feel
to
like
consider.
I have to match where I'm going. It's like if I'm going to go to a 5-star restaurant, I can't show up in my chucks and my cutoffs. No, I got to put some heels on and do something with my face. Okay, I got to like brush my hair. Maybe I can, but like no. And that's why I don't. Sometimes I don't like churches because I feel like it's not come as you are. It's come as you are, modified with your Sunday best. Not come as you are in your yoga pants after you've yelled at everybody because nobody wants to get out the door. It's not that. And coming before Christ is coming before Christ. It's coming in that room where it smells like cigarettes, or sometimes it's smoking a cigarette, being on the floor crying out to God because he sees you at your worst. And I think that's what we're afraid of, is people seeing us at our worst, because you won't look at me the same when I'm dressed as my best. Yeah. And sometimes I wonder if people knew the things that I've done or the person I was, or sometimes if people knew that I'd been in and out of jail, if they would let me lead. Because I don't lead with that foot anymore. I don't lead with the foot that I went to the bar with. I lead with my foot for Jesus now. They're the same feet, but they're with different purpose. Yeah. And sometimes I wonder that, especially when I'm volunteering and they're like, oh, can I do a background check? I'm like, sure. But like, what are you going to find on that background check? And are you still going to want me to lead in the capacity I'm leading when you know that I went to jail, that I'm a recovering addict, that I am all of these things that I could let faze me, and I could lead with those labels, but I don't. Yeah. I don't. I choose not to drink now. And the drug of choice that I did, it wasn't a glamorous one, so it wasn't hard to quit. What was hard to quit was living for myself fully and having this glorification and for myself only, these fleeting feelings. That was the hardest thing to quit, was that feel-good feeling of, let me go to the party and see what I can find, or let me go out there and just see what I can find. Those feel-good, fleeting feelings were the hardest to quit. But the gain was not like nothing else, like nothing else. And I think if we had this space to share anonymously, it would give everybody that freedom. Everybody would be walking around with so much more joy rather than so much more shame that they have to hide because they think that they've done something wrong that really, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, And I was thinking about it because you and I had originally talked about it, and I had this idea where it could be like a podcast or a hotline where you could call and you could share anonymously, whether you have church hurt or whether you lead a church or whether you have no faith at all and you don't know. Just this space to share anonymously. And then I was thinking it could be more than that. You could be a study. So then you can work on sharing anonymously with yourself in your room. Because we live in a day and age where nobody wants to be anonymous. Nobody. Everybody wants to check in. Everybody wants to take pictures. Everybody wants to be seen. There are countless amount of times in the Bible where people were anonymous and they made a magnitude of difference. Do you think that little boy who was giving his lunch, do you think his mom thought of anything that day when she packed that old stuff? No. She probably thought this, because as a mom, if I'm sending my kids with leftover scraps. She probably thought this, please nobody see my kid's lunch today because this is not what I want to offer God. But you know, Jesus took it and he used it. And that little boy, he doesn't have a name. And whoever packed that lunch doesn't have a name. But you know what? It made a huge difference. A huge difference. And then this idea to attach your name to things makes it, I think, less about God and more about, well, what's wrong with Gina? What can Gina do? How can Gina do this? When it's anonymously, then we can all write down what we want to share, and I don't have to be Gina anymore, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love this. I continue to be intrigued and wondering and pondering what would happen if we were all a little bit more honest in our realms and in our relationships and in our faith communities. So what would be the first next step you would suggest someone to take who is yearning for more honesty?
To be honest with yourself. You can't lead anyone if you're not leading honestly with yourself. And it's hard to be honest with ourselves sometimes. It's hard to just sit there in the quietness and be honest. We're always on our phones. We're always on the TV. We're always with some noise, some distraction where you can't sit in that honesty. I suggest sitting with the honest and start one small thing to being honest. One small thing. Instead of saying, I don't know, say what you do know. Give a real response. You know, and it can be something silly as going out to eat or picking paint or, you know, talking to somebody and saying, I don't know if you should wear that. Just say one little honest remark instead of saying, I don't know. Because when you say, I don't know, you're assuming this identity that you don't. When most of the time we do, and we just don't want to say it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. If people want to connect with you, how can they find you?
They can find me at summershomeschooltx@gmail.com.
Awesome. We'll have those in the show notes. And again, welcome you into the conversation. Would love to hear your thoughts about a more honest space, whether that's in your home, in your leadership, or in faith communities. What might that look like if we brought in more honesty? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send your comments and feedback to sheleadscomments@gmail.com. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. She Leads is produced by me, Thea Curry-Fuson, recorded and edited by Pearland Podcast Studios. All thoughts and expressions shared by the guests are theirs and not the organizations they're affiliated with. Thanks for tuning in. Check us out next week to continue the conversation on She Leads.